The question before the House is a motion by Honorable Senator Mswangwa, as set forth on the pages 1 and 2 of the order paper for the joint sitting. Is there any debate? Honorable Maridadi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Can you push your mic nearer you, please?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This momentous occasion, he is not able to be with us because the Lord has decided that he should be with the Lord, Mr. Speaker.
Order. I told your colleague there, Honorable Liswa, the procedure to be followed for that announcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand guided by your wise counsel. Fellow Zimbabweans, the time has come. The time has come for all of us to collectively put our signature in the structure of the Mugabe. The presidential candidate for 2018 for South Africa, we are sitting in state. Mr. Speaker, I rise here to debate and dedicate my debate to the memory of two great sons of the soil. One of them, Lookout Mafela Masuku, a man with impeccable liberation war credentials, liberated this country from the yoke of colonialism, came back to Zimbabwe, and was incarcerated by Robert Mugabe. The court found him not guilty, but Mugabe decided to keep him in detention. He was released. Then 1 week after his release, he died. Robert Mugabe denied Lookout Mafela Masuku, a man with impeccable liberation war credentials, to be buried at the Heroes Acre. Yes. And he lies buried at Stanley Cemetery in Bulawayo. Mr. Speaker, I dedicate my debate to the memory of 22-year-old Itai Dzamara. Mr. Speaker, Itai Dzamara disappeared for one reason, and one reason alone, that Mugabe must go. I had the privilege, Mr. Speaker, to talk to Itai Dzamara on the Thursday, and then he disappeared on Saturday. And he told me, and I quote, Mkoma James, we are on the dawn of a new era. Itai Dzamara cannot be with us today to witness this momentous occasion. Very sad. Mr. Speaker, I then go on to the man called Robert Mugabe. As William Shakespeare said, with one smiling eye and one drooping eye, I'm saddened. It didn't have to come to this. Had President Mugabe listened, he did not listen. He thought he knew it all. Had President Mugabe listened, we would be here today. He did not listen, and I repeat this. Whoever is come after President Mugabe, please do not go this way. You must listen to the people of Zimbabwe. One man holds a country of 15 million people created in the image of the same Lord that created him to ransom. One man, Mr. Speaker, cows an entire nation. He incarcerates at will. He fires wantonly. Mr. Speaker, RG Mugabe become a source of insecurity in this country, and I'll explain why. In a space of 4 years, he dismisses two vice presidents whom he appointed himself, and he accuses them of wanting to kill him. He dismisses a total of more than 24 ministers for plotting to kill him. Ironically, barely 2 years later, he reappoints 2 of those ministers into cabinet without having them gone to court. And I'm talking here of Honorable Shamu and Honorable Chimeta. They were dismissed for plotting to kill him, and yet 3 years later, he brings them back into cabinet before they could go to court. What I'm talking about is that the man Robert Gabriel Mugabe had a very poor sense of judgment. And it is that poor sense of judgment that he must be shown the exit. I cannot wait to see his back. Mr. Speaker, when President Mugabe took over this country in 1980, the Zimbabwean dollar was at par with the American dollar. Come to the British pound, and the pound is the strongest currency in the world. Barely 20 years later, 25 years later, we do not have a currency. It has disappeared, and we are using the US dollar. President Mugabe presided over a crumbling economy, and not a single day did he say anything that would placate this country from the doldrums. All he was interested in was personal power. President Mugabe was interested in his personal power, the safety of his children and wife, and everything else followed. He was not interested about the people of Zimbabwe, and for that reason, President Mugabe must go. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, and I quote from a senior African statesman, Kenneth Kaunda, President Mugabe, you better listen. Strong as you are in economic terms, because you controlled the national purse. Recently, you appointed the poster boy of Zimbabwean corruption to the national purse to head the Ministry of Finance. Strong as you are in economic terms, and strong as you are in military terms, because you controlled the army, you controlled the police, you controlled the CIO. The masses of Zimbabwe have one superior weapon against you. Kenneth Kaunda calls it moral right. The right of political morality is with the children of Zimbabwe. And Mugabe was presiding over a rotten system. A system like that cannot be defended in the long term. That is why we are here today, to show him the exit. Mr. Speaker, I have the privilege to sit in Parliament, and when I sit in Parliament, when President Mugabe comes to Parliament, I sit directly opposite him. President Mugabe's state of health is such that he cannot run a country. He tumbled at the airport. He wobbled when he was going to the podium at the United Nations, and he had to be given assistance by his aide. When he was in India, he wobbled going to the podium, and he had to be assisted by the Indian Prime Minister, in full view of the entire community. There are 15 million Zimbabweans, and most definitely one of us run this country. That is why the Constitution of Zimbabwe says, for you to be president, you only need to have 3 things. You need to be 40 years old, you need to be the citizen of Zimbabwe, and you must be able to read and write. It doesn't say what you are able to read or what you are able to write. If you can write Baba and you can read Umama, you are able to do it. Mr. Speaker, they say in Shona, hallelujah. I discovered that President Mugabe was not fit for purpose in 1999 when I joined the MDC. And that is what we've been saying. My colleagues, Mr. Speaker, to your right, only woke up last week. And that includes you, Mr. Speaker. We were telling you, children of men, rise and smell the coffee. The end is no longer fit for purpose. My motion to impeach President Mugabe was defeated from Parliament because it was said to be frivolous. But the issues that I wrote in that motion, I replicated in this motion. What has changed? It is the same President Mugabe that said to be your presidential candidate in 2018. It was the Speaker of Parliament who presides over this impeachment today. You dismissed my motion. Mr. Speaker, those things must be raised.
Honorable Maridadi, you have been honorable. When the motion was taken down, it was not exactly like what you suggested last time. Furthermore, we had a meeting this morning, which we said, because there are two motions, they should be rationalized. I think you need to be honorable and tell the truth. Please, can we proceed with the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are at the dawn of a new era where children of Zimbabwe from different political persuasions do not have to be enemies. People must be tolerant of each other. The spirit that is displayed in Parliament, Mr. Speaker, when we are debating, is the spirit that must cascade and transcend the nation. That is the spirit that we must see in Binga, is the spirit that we must see in Mavuku, and it is the spirit that we must see in Dangambura or Mfakos. The spirit of tolerance. President Robert Mugabe presided over basically things. He was arrogant. He presided over patronage, impunity, and entitlement. Those things cannot work in a civilized society. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to round up my debate by talking about the economic situation of this country. 90% unemployment. 90% unemployment, Mr. Speaker. A collapsing health service. That is why President Mugabe would go to Malaysia once every month for health checkup. A president of a country will use health facilities that he presides over. The next president of this country must go to Parenyat or Harare Hospital or Blawa United Hospital because of the facilities that he presides over. The head of local government, when he travels, he must use Zupco. Those are the facilities that he presides over. The Minister of Transport, Honorable Joram Gumbo, when he flies to South Africa, he must fly Air Zimbabwe, not SA, because Air Zimbabwe is one that he presides over. When a president leaves the country to seek health attention abroad, what is he talking about? Mr. Speaker, what is good for the goose is good for gander. If the health facilities in Zimbabwe are not good enough for a president, who are they good enough for? They cannot be good for anyone. What it means is that we must all be in a queue going to Malaysia for health checkups if that's where the president goes. Yes. The education system. Zimbabwe has, I'm going to wind down, Mr. Speaker, thank you. Zimbabwe boasts of a 96% literacy rate. 96% literacy rate of people that are not employed, Mr. Speaker. Everyone has been turned into a vendor. President Mugabe reduced all of us to vagabonds. This is why even in Parliament, the members of Parliament are always talking about their welfare. It is reflective of what is happening out there in the society. Mr. Speaker, I support this motion. I would like to thank Honorable Mchanga for moving this motion. I say, without delay, members of Parliament from across the divide. It doesn't matter that you've only come alive recently, but from across the political divide. Let's append our signatures and let your candidate for 2018 go, and he must go now. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
regime.